Hello plant lovers, and today we are going to talk about Miltoniopsis orchids. The reason we're doing this is because I have a few and all of my videos are about my experience that I have hard won and learned by growing orchids here in Melbourne in Australia. And I've had a bit of a story, a journey with Miltoniopsis, so I thought I would share the tips that I have learned and maybe it will help you in growing them because they are a beautiful orchid. So first thing, here we have Miltoniopsis Kelly Spangled Banner, and look how fabulous that is. What a healthy plant. And what I can show you, which I will zoom into a little bit later, is that here we have a flower spike. And in fact, I think I can see another one. I'll do a little zoom in now. So the reason I wanted to make this video is that this orchid has done very well for me. It flowered earlier in this year and it's got a flower spike now, and it is late winter in Australia, and I think there's another flower spike coming through here. So it's going to flower twice in 1 year, which is a surprise for me. So a bit of background about Miltoniopsis and why we're going to make this video. I bought these from a garden fair in October of last year and was told emphatically they are cool to cold growers. Well, plant lovers, I'm here to tell you that Miltoniopsis, though it is a cool orchid, is not a cold orchid. In fact, quite the contrary. So this one I bought in October, and if I reach behind me, this one I bought in October from the same guy, and they were basically the same size when we bought them. This one, which is Banana Fandango, which is the most horrific name on earth for an orchid, but anyway. This one was a gift for a friend of mine, and I gave it to her. It was as big as this one, and it was in bloom, and it was beautiful. Now, she works in the city in Melbourne, and this was sitting in her office, which gets the right amount of light and it's the right temperature. We'll get to all those details later. However, COVID strikes and my friend has to work from home, and her home is in the northwest of Melbourne. High elevation, it's a hill station, and it gets really cold up there. It freezes, it snows, it's a cold place. Obviously, the house is not that cold. But look what happened to Banana Fandango. It did not like that chill and basically almost died. So I went up, there was a little bit of a window between lockdowns in Melbourne, and I went up from Mercy Dash, had a cup of tea and a scone, rescued Banana Fandango and brought it down to the big smoke where it could winter and rest out the COVID lockdown. And as you can see, there is a new growth here. So it is doing quite well, and I think it will perk up within a year, and hopefully my friend will get flowers again. But it had many more pseudobulbs and many more leaves, and look at it now. So let me run through some care tips then that I have learned. First thing is, yes, they are a cool orchid. They grow in the Andes, so the northern bit of South America, so Colombia, Venezuela, Peru, across there, reasonably high altitudes. So they don't like extremely hot temperatures. But they do need a chill and a cooler nighttime temperature. Basically, they like the same kind of temperatures that we do. So they're not that difficult, which makes them perfect for growing indoors. What I've realized though is that they are cold sensitive. So I had, because I bought these from a dealer who assured me that in Melbourne you could grow them outside under shelter. This poor baby I had outside during the winter. Now, as you can see, it's looking a little bedraggled and worse for wear because I've had to snip off a lot of the damaged leaves. Because, plant lovers, we had a couple of nights where it got down to about 1 degree centigrade, and I will put that in Fahrenheit on the screen now. And what I have learned is that Miltoniopsis do not like going down that cold. So I would say if temperatures are dropping below 10 degrees centigrade, keep them indoors. Now, outdoors, this was undercover, so it was protected from cold wind, and relatively warmer than a few meters that way where it was more exposed, but nonetheless, it really didn't like it. Some of the leaves really were burnt by the cold, unfortunately. However, I've trimmed off the dead leaves and we've got a few new leaves popping up, so I think it's going to make a full recovery. Here's the thing about orchids though, unforgiving. So if you get it wrong, you kind of have a year for it to recover to get back to a flowering cycle. So you've got to try and get it right. watch this video and you'll get it right with Miltoniopsis to start with. So there we are. The first thing is Miltoniopsis are a cool growing, relatively high altitude epiphytic orchid. So they're used to getting water a lot and humidity a lot, but not hot temperatures, and relatively cool nights without getting below about 10 degrees centigrade, which is the bandwidth for most people's houses. So not too difficult. So that's the first thing, temperature. The next thing is they are epiphytic, cool growers from high altitude, so they do like to be kept moist. They don't like to dry out. They've got a fairly fine root system. Obviously ease up a little in winter with your watering, but don't let it dry out. In summer, particularly if you're in a warmer place like me here in Melbourne, then they do need to be watered relatively frequently to make sure that they don't dry out. And really in summer, I don't think you can overwater them as long as the medium is very free draining. So that is that. Light-wise, I let the summer outside. Again, it's undercover and it's sheltered, so they get a little bit of gentle morning light, not too long, just a little bit of a sunbathe in the morning, and then they get filtered light. So they're sort of an intermediate light requirement. I would say about the same as an oncidium, really. No direct light unless it's gentle early morning light, and then a fairly bright but filtered ambient light. Nothing strong, but also not too dark, because that's not going to promote flower growth. So there you are, relatively quite easy. Now, medium, epiphytic, they like a free draining media, so nothing special. I've just mixed not too large a bark with a little bit of perlite to maintain the moisture, and a little bit of shell grit, because I love that. It's full of calcium, and although it's for chickens, I feel orchids love it too. Depending where you are though, if you're in somewhere that's quite hot, you might want to mix in sphagnum moss with the bark to keep it moist. Really depends where you are, but for me here in Melbourne, a fairly average orchid mix has done quite well. As you know, I'm a terracotta pot kind of guy. Terracotta does it allows moisture to pass through, it allows moisture to evaporate, so it creates a kind of a mini cooling evaporative system around the orchids. And you can also stand them in a pot with some little volcanic pebbles underneath to create extra humidity if you want. But Miltoniopsis like humidity, but they're not crazy difficult. I give them a spray. They're not actually sitting in water dishes, they just get a bit of a spray, maybe once or twice every couple of days. Seem quite happy. The name Miltoniopsis comes from a Viscount Milton, who was a great orchid collector in the late 18th, early 19th century in Britain, and he gave these orchids their name. Back to Kelly's Spangled Banner. It flowered for me early this year. We've got a couple of flower spikes now. So this orchid is happy. It's been indoors over winter. It produced a flower spike whilst it was outside during summer, where it got a little bit of morning light. So that seemed to suit it well. But inside it has quite bright but indirect light, coolish evenings but not too cold, and it's produced a flower spike indoors as well. So I think the moral of the story with Miltoniopsis, perfect for indoors because they like the same kind of weather conditions that we do. However, just make sure it doesn't dry out, particularly if you're in somewhere with quite dry heat during winter. But it does need a cooler evening. Bear that in mind. Fertilizer, again, nothing special, just a little bit relatively often. Ease up in winter, pump it up a little bit in spring and summer while it's growing. And they're really quick growers. This one has just gone gangbusters, and pretty soon it's going to be quite an amazing specimen. And here's something to prove that I am an orchid novice, is that I didn't realize that they had a fragrance. I'll drop in a picture of this one in flower earlier this year. When it was in bloom, I was so excited, I put it on the table so we could see it when we're having breakfast and dinner. I thought, what's the smell? It is Kelly Spangled Banner, and it has the most beautiful, slightly spicy smell, which to me smelled like marigolds, but that when you crush a marigold leaf, that beautiful smell. Anyway, the fragrance was gorgeous. There are all sorts of hybrids which have amazing colors. They are, I think, once you get it right, relatively easy to grow. Just don't get them too cold. Don't grow them in super heat outside. No direct sunlight. You can see this one has got sunburn. Poor darling, this was from its summer holiday. Just a little bit too much light on that. Miltoniopsis 101. If you're going to repot them, do it in spring, so nowish in the southern hemisphere is a good time, just before the new growth starts, while its sap is starting to rise. So spring is the time to repot them. Again, pot wise, depends wherever you are, whatever works best for you and the orchids that you have, but I would pot it in a similar way that you would an oncidium. Be careful of the roots, they're quite fine and sensitive. They dry out very quickly, but there you go. Very easy, very rewarding. The flower spikes have proven quite easy to generate, and it's a gorgeous orchid. There we are, plant lovers. Miltoniopsis 101. I think we've covered everything. We have covered light, medium, watering, temperature, and fertilizer. What more could you want in life? Thank you for watching. Thank you for being engaged. I hope it helps you. As I said in another video, the reason I'm making these is because it's so hard to find information specific to your environment, and you kind of have to experiment. And as you can see with these Miltoniopsis, experiment I have, and I have learnt. Luckily, both of these, who suffered somewhat in the experimentation, I think are going to make a healthy recovery. So that's good. I will come back when this is in full bloom and show you what it looks like. So until then, plant lovers, take care wherever you are, have fun and grow things because it's good for the soul.